Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Well, hello, folks, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities PairOfNormal Guys podcast radio show. I am one of your two hosts, Garrett Jagaman.
And I'm your second host this evening, Daniel James.
And what is it we're going to be talking tonight, Daniel?
Listen, guys, this is going to be a strong one. This is going to be fun and a little weird. Tonight we're talking about the Men in Black. Now, not necessarily the Men in Black that you see with your Will Smiths and your Tommy Lee Jones, but the ones that they were based on, the real beings, and we're going to get really far into that phenomenon. The second half of tonight's episode is going to be about a very specific entity known as Indrid Cold and what his ties to the Men in Black may or may not be.
Absolutely, and I think you guys are going to love this show. I think you're going to love what we have to talk about tonight. But before we jump into those subjects, if you were listening live or you're streaming this after the fact, whether you're listening on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or any of the other amazing, platforms out there that air, streaming of podcasting, make sure you click the like button, share button, or follow button, whatever button they give you. Please click it, because the more that you do that, the more it moves us up the podcast community rankings, the more people that discover the show, and ultimately the bigger and better things we can do with the show. We do bring you several shows and episodes per month. It's a 2-part series. You have Celestial Oddities PairOfNormal Guys, which is our show tonight with Daniel and myself, where we pick specific subject matter and we dive deep into that, give theories and thoughts behind it. And then the second part is Celestial Oddities Oddworld, where we take on phone calls from all over the world to listen to people's encounters of the supernatural and bizarre and paranormal. So make sure you check out all past, present, and future episodes on whatever platform you like listening to your podcasting. There's certainly something out there for everyone, and we think you guys will enjoy it. Now, before we jump into the subject, I do also want to thank our sponsors, Cryptid TV. If you don't know who Cryptid TV is, you can find them on Facebook and YouTube. Just search Cryptid TV, and make sure you follow their page on Facebook, because what that is it's an online community that brings together people from all over the world to talk different things of ghosts, demons, hauntings, cryptids, aliens, UFOs, you name it, it's on that page. It's a great place not only to find out about new material, read interesting subjects, but also really to network with people in the community that are like-minded like you. They've been a big supporter of the show, and we're very glad to have them as a sponsor. So make sure you check them out, and much love to Cryptid TV. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into it. As Daniel had said, we are going to be talking about the Men in Black and Indrid Cold tonight. We're going to start out with the Men in Black, and Dan had said, it's not what you're thinking. Every time you hear the word Men in Black, before you think of the real Men in Black, you think of Tommy Lee Jones and you think of Will Smith, and that's a shame because they are based on the actual Men in Black, and the real Men in Black are by far anything comical, fun, and kind. They are something that is to, be revered, someone to be scared of, because they are not someone who's kind to someone who's seen UFOs, aliens, or has knowledge that should not be released. A lot of times contactees offer a very rosy picture of UFO phenomenon, but there's a much, much darker version inside of that. And, there was a gentleman by the name of Albert Bender from Bridgeport, Connecticut, back in the 1950s. He formed a group called the International Flying Saucer Bureau, IFSB for short. It was met with very big success back then. He was doing great things in the UFO side of things and finding research and really getting to the bottom of a lot of great things. Expected to be something that just skyrocketed. Well, and the next thing you know, the very following year, he just up and closes his company, shuts the doors, it's over. Very strange, very bizarrely, no one understood why, and it was sometime later that he came forward and, said that it was due to the circumstance that 3 men in black had showed up, and pretty much he didn't say what it is that they told him, but he said that they had discussions with him, shared information with him, and shortly after that, that was when he decided to stop his research and stop doing the organization that he had built. So very strange. That is one of your very first encounters and reported encounters of the Men in Black. So it's very interesting that someone so devout into ufology and made it his life to do so would start this wonderful organization and then within 1 year's time close its doors without a word as to why, after being visited from 3 men in black suits, sharing information with him. So kind of interesting. He did come out years later and revealed that the men drove him out of the business, spooked him, scared him. He still didn't really say what it is that they told him. But he did say that there was things that were shared with him and there was threats made. So it's common knowledge that whenever you hear about the Men in Black and their encounters, that there are a lot of threats behind it. They're, like I said, not the comedic or fun-loving guys that you see in the movie portrayal. These are people who want to silence you. They want to, and I say people loosely because I don't believe that they're human, but these are entities or a breed of some sort that want to silence you from sharing knowledge that you should not, be sharing out there. Oftentimes noted as having blank expressions, no eyebrows, surprisingly enough. And I've seen some pictures there are pictures out there in certain incidences that have happened that they've been caught on candid camera or, security footage of these gentlemen in all black suits, sunglasses, sometimes taking their glasses off, and they are very emotionless, very blank, very pale white faces, no eyebrows, no facial hair. Very spooky, almost look like they're robotic of some sort, and their skin is really just kind of on there. So if you haven't found or seen any pictures of this, you should look it up. It's very eerie, very scary. I know if they showed up, looking for myself and were asking about me, I would certainly be scared if I seen these guys. So, something to definitely look into if you haven't researched already. But they are tied with so many different things, so many different encounters out there. I don't remember the exact gentleman and what it is that he was researching, but I do remember that there was a gentleman out there who was big into disclosure and letting people know about aliens and about UFOs, and he had a good bit of proof that he had captured on film of UFOs, and he started getting phone calls telling him, you need to stop what you're doing if you know it's good for you. You need to stop what you're doing if you care about your family and you want to keep them safe. A lot of different phone calls, people following him around, weird occurrences happening. He ignored them. He kept pushing. He wanted to be that devout guy who continued to release great information to the public. Well, he came home one night and his house was broken into. He noticed, and it's very strange because you'd think that they would take all of his evidence, but they didn't. He had a roll of film, negatives, and they snipped out a specific section of the negatives and took them, leaving the remainder, which still showed a UFO spaceship of some sort in the sky. But for some reason, whatever was in those series of pictures, it was like 12 or 14 pictures, they took specifically those pictures and left absolutely everything else. He continued to, at that point he was pissed, so he really started pushing it then, started going on different shows and broadcasts and things, and continued to get threats, and they started to threaten him in very specific ways, saying, if you continue what you're doing, you better be very careful. It wouldn't be hard for us to put toxins, neurotoxins, on things like your steering wheel, your door handle of your house, or anywhere for that matter. which obviously, if you know about neurotoxins, you grab the door handle, you turn it, it instantly seeps into your skin, and you are dead. So they played the fear tactic, but very real fear tactic, and he had to start worrying. Well, he didn't listen. He still continued to push it. Next thing you know, this healthy guy who just got a checkup not too long before that, was 100% healthy, suffers a massive heart attack. And he did not die, but he knows that there was foul play there, and it scared him enough that he stopped putting out his UFO research. So as I was getting to, is time and time again, when you truly are on the verge of something great, you run into these encounters. There is video surveillance of two Men in Black agents coming into a hotel of two guys who spotted a UFO craft above their hotel one night during their night shift. And they weren't there the day that the agents showed up, but they were caught on camera. And sure enough, you see these two very pale, very large, funny-looking gentlemen enter the hotel and asking for these two and asking where they're at, and kind of intimidating and scaring the people behind the counter. But it was said by reports of eyewitnesses there that were working at the hotel that there was something very strange about these two. They gave off a very, very odd and strange aura to them. And the one, I believe was a female, said that she almost felt while she was talking to them, and she doesn't know why, but she almost felt while talking to them that they were able to read her thoughts. She was answering, but she felt like they were inside her head while talking to them. So very, very interesting. There's a lot more to talk about on this subject, but I'm going to rebuttal back over to Daniel. What are your thoughts on this?
No, that was very comprehensive. You know, I'm always impressed with the information and the knowledge that you have and that you resonate with, and your research is always spot on. I know that that video clip specifically it's famous, it's viral, you know,
absolutely.
And that back when I was first starting to do research on the Men in Black myself in 2015, these were a lot of points that I was coming to and hitting as well. Now, as the formula of this show goes, I like to sort of hit you guys with what I know and what I've learned over the years in my pursuit of, you know, studying metaphysics and the expansion of consciousness. And here's what I've learned about the Men in Black, okay? There are human versions at very low levels and ranks. Now, what this means is your CIAs and your general government types, they do exist. So we do have human beings that serve as, you know, those enforcers of knowledge and information. They do travel in SUVs, and they have been known on low-level occasions to confront and interrogate people about any sort of interaction or recordings or reports that they have with the paranormal. And it's not always just aliens. It can be cryptids. It can be, other types of paranormal activity when somebody makes a very public display of their findings and their experiences. That's when these guys generally show up. So there are human Men in Black, but I do believe that they're at very surface level ranks in terms of like CIA and the government, which if you are into disclosure at all, you know that those are pretty low level. Those are pretty low tiers in the ranking system of control and leadership. So getting into more about what Garrett was talking about, he says, you know, right, Garrett, you said you don't believe that they're entirely human.
Well, in
right?
some cases they're not. I mean, as you said, I believe some are, but in the case of Albert Bender, where he was starting the UFO Society and then very frightened by three, Men in Black agents, they actually, 9 years afterwards, he kept silent for a very long time and wouldn't speak about what they told him. And he still never fully disclosed what they told him. But he did 9 years later come forward and said that they were monsters of some sort, like they weren't human. He said that they actually told him that they were from a planet called Kazik, Kazik.
All right, so let's get into this. My research from 2015 has led me into a lot of dark rabbit holes, okay, and webs that spread far into the mind and really challenge your belief structure. From what I understand, the Men in Black are actually a type of robot, like an organic robot, in the sense that you take a human body, more like an empty shell of a human vessel, like a clone, and they're manufactured and produced by many different organizations from all over the world. But they're generally clones or even puppets that are ran by, secret organizations that we don't know about publicly, and this goes above the CIA and above the government. There's a lot of sub-organizations, very dark stuff. If you're familiar with the secret space program and the concept of super soldiers, there are organizations that exist far, far, far outside of our awareness, and they have the ability to clone beings or grow physical human vessels and make what's called as avatars. And so from what I understand, the Men in Black are almost like robots in the sense that an extraterrestrial race or a very high class secret organization that does this type of technology can download like an AI, if you will, into a clone or a physical vessel, or what we call an avatar in the super soldier sort of community. And then they can human beings can control these avatars, these robots, remotely, like puppets from, their command centers. And what they'll do is when somebody has a sighting of something and they're going public about it, they'll send one of these drones, one of these robots, one of these avatars to mine for information, heckle them, harass them, intimidate them, threaten them, to getting information. And if they are a threat and they can't be silenced, then these people straight up disappear. So from what I understand, the scarier, more esoteric versions of the Men in Black are the ones that people report that you can clearly tell they're not human. Something's far, far, far off about them. They speak very strangely, sometimes robotically. They've also been known to speak in unison if there are more than one. And they move robotically. Some are depicted to have facial hair. Some don't have facial hair. Some are bald. So it's, to my understanding, to summarize, that the Men in Black, the real Men in Black, are more like avatars or robots that can be puppeteered or controlled, if you will, from far, far, far away from the public, to basically like foot soldiers to go around and interrogate people who are contactees or witnesses to the paranormal.
I agree. I think that is exactly what they are. And I think, as you said, I think there's different levels of these agents. I think there are more humanoid, maybe human, soldiers themselves that go out in the field and do that. And depending upon maybe the level of sighting and the level of amount being shared with the public from, any said person or organization might depend on which of these type of agents visit you.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's been captured, there's a picture, and I wish I remembered which case it was, but there was a picture where someone was being followed, and they actually capture this gentleman standing across the road in all black, but he does have hair, he has a full head of hair, and he's kind of hiding around the corner. And it's bizarre. I mean, you obviously see, this person was saying they're being followed, they were being threatened. They take a picture of a guy across the street in all black. It looks, certainly out of place. But
right.
then there's the pictures, as I mentioned earlier, and video footage of these very strange, as Daniel said, robotic, soldiers or agents coming in that talk in unison sometimes and literally, say the exact same things at the exact same time. Sometimes they move in unison. They'll both look to the left at the exact same time, then turn and look back at you and answer. It's almost simultaneous, and you wonder how that is. Are they being controlled? Do they share a selected shared consciousness of one another?
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. And as I said, there has been cases where, in this gentleman's case I mentioned earlier, they have even mentioned about being from another planet, as such as Kazakh. They didn't say what galaxy that's in, which we'll talk about some other things later, where more information is shared. But this one, they specifically said a planet name, which I thought was very interesting.
Okay, well, I like that. Let me jump on that real quick.
Absolutely.
So I'm studying a lot about the concept. I mean, obviously, this is a discussion for another time, but I'm studying a lot about the concept of these super soldiers and what they're used for and where they're sent, and what, the whole super soldier concept is very fascinating to me. And so the more I'm learning about it is that there are sub organizations. Like if you talk about like MK Ultra and the CIA, Well, we know that that's a type of mind programming, a type of conditioning that you can go through, that they do to people to create what's called as alters or super soldiers, and then give them superhuman abilities, and they put them on jobs and tasks to do specific things. Well, what I'm learning about that now in my studies is that, like the MK Ultra sort of monarch CIA type of idea, is just one organization of like 30 that are just created and maintained by totally different countries and totally different organizations that have their own name for these organizations, their own purpose, their own tasks that they carry out. So when you said that this very one specific encounter, they mentioned that they were from a specific planet, that they could be ET, I absolutely subscribe to that and resonate with that concept, because I think that the Men in Black, the ones that human civilians, if I can use that term, have encountered, probably come from multiple different sources and might even be sent to you from different organizations under the same blanket term as the Men in Black. But they could be like, one could be from Russia and they don't communicate with the United States. And then another type of Men in Black could come from the States and they don't communicate with Germany or Europe. These sub-organizations that make these like avatars and alters and clones and things like that, they're actually a lot of them, and they're doing their own thing. Okay, so I think the same goes for the ETs and the aliens. I think that when you go into abduction stories, people who are being abducted in their homes or get abducted from their car, or have a spaceship land and they talk to an alien or whatever, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of different races that have their own total agendas for communicating with humans, abducting people, studying people, whatever their purpose is. Like, you've got different shapes of spaceships and you have different times of the day that there's sightings. I think we're dealing with thousands of different alien races. And I think that whatever being that person saw under that specific name that you mentioned is accurate. And I bet you that alien race from that planet sent those beings, they could have even been aliens from that planet under the guise or the stereotype of the Men in Black archetype. So my point is with this big rant is that I think that there's multiple different kinds of Men in Black, and they all come from different races and organizations, be it human or not.
I agree. I think that is definitely the case. And I think that in the movies, they obviously did make an adaptation into, a franchise at this point, and the Men in Black became very big, several movies. I think there's more truth to the movie than people realize. I mean, here's the funny thing to begin with. As I said, whenever you say out loud the Men in Black, everyone thinks of obviously the iconic duo of Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. But most people don't realize, if they're not privy to the supernatural, to ufology, anything like that, that it's actually based after real events and real things, and they don't know much about it. But I think that there's more truth not only behind the concept of the Men in Black in general, but some of the things that they show in the movie. As you said, you believe that there is a chance in certain cases that some of these are more of a cloned robotic shell. Well, in the very first movie, they do press pull the guy's earlobe, and it opens up, and inside the humanoid head is an alien host. Yeah. And I believe that very well could be. Now, that one was a good person or a good alien race in this case, but what I'm getting at is I think that there very well could be something using a humanoid disguise as a host that comes and talks. Because if it showed up as an alien, you're not going to talk to it. It's not going to get information out of you. Even if it shows up as a humanoid figure that's very bizarre, you're still going to kind of answer, especially when it waves a badge at you. And that's the thing, is they're often known to show a badge of some sort, say that they are with some type of government agency. It might be one that you've heard of. In some cases, it's one that you haven't. And sometimes they even say that they're part of a UFO research group. So they don't always present themselves as lost. Sometimes they say, we are part of a research group and we need information to try to pick your brain and see what you have. And they seem to know things. One gentleman had a piece of a piece of an aircraft that I guess wrecked, and he found a piece of a spaceship, if I'm not mistaken. I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turn, because I read a lot and I research a lot, so sometimes it's hard to remember every little piece, but I do remember that he had a piece of something, a metallic piece of a ship or something alienistic that he wasn't supposed to have, and he told absolutely no one. Next thing he knows, he gets a knock on his door from a single Men in Black agent. The guy is saying, if you should hand that over to me right away, if you know it's good for you and if you appreciate your safety. He said, I don't have it. I turned it into the police. I don't have it anymore. He did make a phone call and said that there was a wreck of some sort, so that part's true, but he says whenever I reported and everything, they collected what I gathered. I don't have it anymore, which was a lie. And the agent automatically knew he was lying. He says, I would watch yourself. And then he started getting these phone calls threatening his life and threatening his family. But the crazy part is he never, from his report after this happened, he had never told a single soul that he took this piece of metal, but somehow something already knew, and they were already sent to him, knocking on his door, threatening his life. They're very intelligent, and they seem to know a lot more than what any one person or thing should know somehow. So very bizarre, very bizarre.
Yeah, man. And I want to touch on another thing you said. When you were talking about the movies, okay, so the Men in Black films, there's like 3 of them now. A lot of times what happens through mainstream media, and this is a big thing just with aliens in general, not the Men in Black, but I'm using them as an example because it's appropriate. Mainstream media, specifically movies and music, they're under a lot of control and manipulation to, whether that be misdirect society, or take something and skew it or distort it, or even demonize it. And a lot of times what I see happen through movies, specifically with aliens, is that what they'll do is they'll take a concept like the Men in Black and they'll make a comedy out of it with household names, big movie stars that everybody loves, and make it a comedy. And what it does is they depict it in such a fantastic way that the general population, the mass consensus is that it's a work of fiction. It's fantasy. It's not real. These things don't really exist. It's satire in a sense. They were almost taking a concept that was real and built on fact and then making a joke out of it.
I agree 100%.
They do that with aliens a lot, where another agenda with ETs in mainstream media, specifically movies, is 9 times out of 10, they're depicted in a very negative, fear-based way. They're zapping us, they're blowing us up, they're abducting us, they're doing horrible things that scare us. And that's so that we fear the concept of them, let alone ever want to, subscribe to the fact that they actually exist. Fear will drive you far, far away from something that could very much be a reality based on the way it's depicted. So I think when the Men in Black movies came out, it was fun. And it's funny because my girlfriend Lauren and I, we just watched the first one recently, like last week. And I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, but I was watching it now with my new eyes. And I'm just like, this is crazy, the way that they depict everything and how it's just a big joke. And, we're being misdirected into thinking that this is real. So a little shameless plug here. In 2015, the cause for a lot of my research was I was producing a movie on loosely based on my own personal experiences and my spiritual awakening. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to depict the Men in Black the way that I knew that they truly were. And this is everything that Garrett and I have discussed in this episode. Their physical appearance, their demeanor, the way they talk, the way they move. The real stories, to sort of anchor this back into my version of reality, where it's not just a big joke with, famous movie stars for friends and family to enjoy, but this is actually a real phenomena that people have been terrified by. And so in my movie, Those Who Seek, we depict the Men in Black. And I call them the esoteric men as their title in the movie. So I would encourage anybody listening to go check the movie out so you can kind of see a physical depiction, a physical, depiction of the way that we've described them, it's nothing like those happy movies. And so I'd be interested to see what you guys think about that. I did my very best to direct them and mold them after the stories that, Garrett and I have researched to really sort of bring this episode to you. So that was just one little thing I wanted to add on the concept of Men in Black, is those 3 movies. I think that if you look at it from a positive perspective, yes, it's good that those movies were made. I am ultimately glad that they exist and people can see the fact that we have organizations and secret services, secret programs that interact with extraterrestrials, be it positive or negative. It is a type of disclosure. And I think disclosure is another concept that Garrett and I are going to get more and more into on this podcast, is talking about the truth, or our truth, rather. And so ultimately, when there's an alien movie or a Men in Black movie, I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that we can see that there are aliens and secret services like that interact with them. However, the way that they're depicted is very important. If we're being misled and misdirected that it's just a work of fantasy and it's all fiction and it's all just for fun in Hollywood, then we're never really going to assume or commit to the fact that these are real systems and real paradigms that are happening behind the scenes.
No, I agree 100%. And you said a couple important things there that, it's funny to me because you say that, they often do depict alienistic beings of being of malevolent nature, being violent, being deadly. And in some cases, I believe that is true because, as you said, I believe there are thousands of races of other alien beings out there. And I believe that we live amongst them. And folks out there, if you didn't ever think about that, I believe that if you were to walk around somewhere like New York City on a normal day in Times Square and look around you at thousands of people, the streets bustling, not everyone that you're looking at is human. There are certainly other things there that you just don't know. They appear to be, but I don't believe that they are. They're masters of camouflage, such as ghosts are. They're masters of what they do, and they're masters of camouflage. Now, the movies would portray that all of them are bad. It's very rare you see a movie where they're good. Every now and then they make a comedy or something that they're okay, or a movie like E.T. where they're kind, but 95% of the time they're depicted as violent. Now, it's known that the Men in Black, from all accounts in history of encounters with the Men in Black, that they are not nice, that they are actually horrible entities that silence people, and they're known as a silence group as their category. They're a silence group to silence people from speaking out on things that they should not speak about. So they are intimidating, they are, violent, and in a lot of cases probably deadly. But in the movie Men in Black, they flip-flop it on us. And now they make these things that are known to be horrible into funny action star, you love them guys. And then in tradition, some of the aliens in the movie are good, but in tradition, they make the aliens bad, which are often normally good. So as Dan said, it's great when there's movies out there portraying aliens, UFOs, anything in the supernatural. I love to see because it brings more cognitive awareness to everyone out there, and it's great to open your mind because here's the thing, folks, and most people will never have it. Most people will never allow themselves to have it. But every now and again, you'll meet someone who's truly had a spiritual awakening, and both Daniel and myself have, and there's no way of describing it. The weight off your shoulders, the change of life, the change of thought and heart is just tremendous. And I love to see that they put out more things that can help make people, awaken from the everyday lies that you're living in. But don't always believe that just what they show you and things that help you think outside the box are the way that they are. It's great that they do help you think outside the box, but look behind the lies because it's only partially true. As I said, that movie gives things that I think are definitely accurate in certain senses, but 90% of it's absolute bullshit. So open your eyes, think outside the box, but also think for yourself. Don't just believe what you're told. But real quick, Dan, I do want you to tell people, why don't you tell us where we can catch your film at, and a link to that, or where they can find it, because I think that's important for them to see, because it's an awesome film. You did a great job on it, and I think people should check it out.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I would love to get some new eyes on this. We do have some extra time here left in the show, so I'll just give a brief description on the movie. Um, I had gone through my spiritual awakening officially in 2012. And for many people, when you go through an awakening, it's usually prompted or triggered by something traumatic or extreme. And at the time, I was going through a lot of changes in my life, dealing with debilitating medical issues, going through a divorce, medically challenged, and that's what prompted my spiritual awakening. And ever since that point, it's sort of been my mission, if you will, to spread consciousness and spread awareness on the darker areas of life, promoting new ways to look at things and peeling back the curtain so we can kind of see how, the gears and cogs fit together, in terms of, the way that reality works. And that's sort of been my mission for the past, I don't know how many years. Those Who Seek was my love letter to the New Age community, that anybody who was new to these concepts, such as the law of attraction or the concept that ETs exist and extra dimensional beings exist, but not only are they real, but many of them are positive and probably love us very much. At that same time, I was also getting into an alternative type of mediumship, psychic mediumship, which is known as channeling, where you alter your brainwave frequencies to go into like a trance state, and then you can sort of use your body or your vessel like a phone, like a communicating tool, to communicate to higher dimensional beings. And that was something that I was fascinated by, and I was meeting new people who were able to do that and learning about it. So I decided that it was part of my spiritual awakening. Channeling was very important, that I wanted to depict a movie about it and other entry-level metaphysical concepts. So my team with Tragic Hero Productions, we decided to write a movie that was loosely based on my spiritual awakening and my entry level into channeling, which is where, we needed more of we needed an antagonist for the film as well. And that's where I decided to integrate the Men in Black as to be the sort of like villains, the bad guys, if you will. So it was important to us to make this movie that would be almost like a consciousness tool. So anybody who was new to the New Age spiritual community, new to channeling, new to metaphysics, new to the law of attraction, they'd be able to watch this movie, which is fundamentally a work of entertainment, okay? I think that's so important to mention, because the reason why I'm so passionate about the way aliens are depicted in mainstream media is because entertainment is a non-invasive, non-threatening way to deliver information. Now, the subconscious is a very powerful tool. That's why when, we're little kids and you watch Nightmare on Elm Street or you watch a horror film, it scares you. And you stay up at night when you sleep with the lights on, because part of us can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. And I think that's because fantasy is real. And the way it's depicted to you is so important in how that shapes the way that you view your life or the way reality works. So we wanted to make a movie that wouldn't depict the aliens in a negative way, but would depict them in a positive way and show some of the structures and paradigms that are around that whole concept. And I thought that it would almost be like, to use an analogy, it would be like my Neo to the Matrix, where he jacks into the program, into the hologram, into the system ran by machines, and he wakes people up, in a sense. And they fight, the negative systems from within. So I said, okay, well, the mainstream media is such a toxic platform for negative agendas and whatever you want to call it, fake news. I don't really know. But the way they depict aliens and other things is a type of predictive programming that will instigate a way that a person will perceive that thing that they saw in the movie when they come across it in their real life. It's called predictive programming, so people can be influenced on how to feel or think about a certain thing when they see it depicted through mainstream media, or specifically the movies, okay? So like Neo, I was jacking myself into the Matrix, downloading into the program through entertainment. What's that analogy, the horse, the Trojan horse, where you sort of take a movie, which are usually used for fear and negative agendas, and make a movie that would have the same effect for the positive. Show people that not all aliens are bad. Show people that you can actually create your own reality. You can control your own reality. You can talk to aliens if you want. And so that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to make this red pill and download into the matrix and spread consciousness. And that's been my goal. So this movie, Those Who Seek, is sort of my love letter to metaphysics and to the expansion of consciousness by delivering these concepts through a non-threatening platform, which is entertainment, movies. That's my goal. I know I'm ranting here a little bit, but I'm very passionate about the way that information can be delivered through entertainment. It can be positive or negative. So I'm here to create, you're right. So I'm here to create conscious media, positive entertainment, to show people the other side of things. So we did a fundraiser for the movie. The fundraiser was successful. And we were able to produce about a 45 minute short film that ends with some channeling and things like that. I was fortunate enough to fly to Los Angeles, California to a channeling event and meet a bunch of awesome, amazing people that donated their time and energy to the movie. So what I would say is check it out. It's a little bit on the longer side. It is an independent film. We had a very small budget. Okay, I think that we had less than $7,000 to produce what was almost a feature-length film. So it's very grassroots. It was a very small skeleton team that made the movie. But it is my baby. It is my passion project. And it is sort of my gift to anybody who's new to the sort of like new agey spiritual metaphysics. It's designed for those people to be able to look at something in a less threatening way, like entertainment, but also show you that these things can also be translated into your real life.
And I think you did a very good job with it. I think that it's something people should see. As you said, it is a very grassroots film, and you made it almost into a full-length feature film, which is amazing, on a very low budget, and you really portray exactly what you just said. I mean, it makes you think outside the box, and that's exactly what I ask everyone to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis is, when's the last time you thought for yourself? When is the last time you took a step back from the monotonous everyday hustle and programming and thought your own thoughts? Not what you were taught, not what you were told, but what you believe, what you formulated on your own. And I think you did a great job with the film.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Coming from you, man, that means a lot. So people can watch the movie for free. Okay, that was my gift, is that I didn't want anybody to have to pay any money to see this movie so that I could reach as many people and help as many people as possible. Okay, so if you go to YouTube, go to Tragic Hero Productions on YouTube. You can find 2 different trailers for the movie, and the full film, about 42 minutes long, is there on the YouTube channel, free to watch. And if you check it out, send us an email to celestialoddities@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, leave a comment on YouTube, hit me up and let me know what you think. It is a gift to anybody who's interested in these concepts. Check it out.
And it's a great gift to certainly have. So like he said, folks, make sure you check it out. And also, as Dan said, let us know you checked it out. Let us know what you thought about it. Let us know if you have any questions or concerns, or on anything on the show for that matter. Anything that you want to know more about, anything that you want to see us talking about on a future episode, any questions or concerns, anything that you think we could be doing better or differently. We would love to hear from you. If you have an encounter with UFOs, aliens, hell, if you had an encounter with the Men in Black, Indrid Cold, anything that we talk about on this show, or something completely altogether separate, hit us up at celestialoddities@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Let us know. We answer everyone daily. You will not be forgotten. You will not be pushed to the side. We make sure we talk to all of our fans and stay in contact with everyone. So we would love to hear from you. And, we'll certainly be back in touch. Now,
yeah, guys, let's we got a little bit of time left, Garrett. Let's hit these guys with Indrid Cold, okay? Who is he?
Absolutely.
What is he about? What's his story? Like, let's figure this out.
So, for those of you who haven't heard about this gentleman or this entity, this alien, he's commonly known as the Smiling Man, and is reported to be a humanoid entity of some sort. And the reason they call him the Smiling Man is his tendency to smile at those who encounter him. And, he's associated with the Men in Black. He's associated heavily with sightings of the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. He is cited other things that have nothing to do with either. So he is kind of an interesting character because he has been talked about in different states, different areas, and has been around for quite some time, and said that he is still actually seen from time to time in Point Pleasant, West Virginia to this day, which would make him very old. So he's reported, like I said, to be a human-like in appearance, though commonly associated with UFOs and UFO activity. Is sometimes to be believed as an alien himself, and it's possible that he is connected with the Men in Black. And the very first sighting was seen on October 16th of 1966 by two young boys, Martin Mouse Manove and James Jimmy Young-Chitis. I apologize if I'm saying these names wrong. I'm butchering them. In New Jersey. And they were walking on 4th Street near their home when they saw a surreal figure standing near a fence. And as they walked closer to this figure, it kind of like drew them in. They could tell something was off, but they had to kind of check it out. And as they got closer, they could tell that he was a tall, bald man wearing a metal green metallic suit, a reflective suit, who was staring right at them with just this massive, huge grin. It's said that he chased them, which is interesting because in most all accounts of Indrid Cold, he doesn't seem violent. He doesn't seem to cause people harm. And in one of the encounters I'm about to tell you here in a minute, he actually seems like a very pleasant being of some sort, or maybe it would at least appear that way. But at the very first time that he was ever reported or talked about was from two young children who said that he chased them. Now, what's very interesting is that was October 16th, 1966 was the first encounter, and they ran from this guy and they got away. Now, November 2nd, 1966, so you're talking not even a full month later, about a half a month later, in Parkersburg, West Virginia, right around the same time Mothman started popping up, very close to the same time, a gentleman named Woodrow Derenberger was driving his truck home on Interstate 77, and he heard a very loud crash. Now, he said that all of a sudden this figure started approaching him, and he came towards him. He was a very dark complexion, almost a very dark tan man, and he walked up to the vehicle but didn't speak. He telepathically had said to him that my name is Indrid Cold, and that he meant him no harm. He said that he was here to find out more about the human race and how we work, how we are as a race and people, and asked that he be able to come back and visit Derenberger from time to time and learn more from him. Now, what's very interesting about this story is I heard an interview with Derenberger's daughter, who said that from time to time her father would disappear for days or even sometimes weeks. No telling his family ahead of time he was going away. He would just vanish and not come home. Weeks later would show back up. Oftentimes wouldn't talk about what had happened, but he did make mention several times that he was with Indrid. It's very interesting because this happened over a series of time, and he would just vanish. No one knew where he went. No one knew what he was doing. But apparently he was hanging out with this alienistic being that was trying to learn more about our culture. Now, he did share that Indrid told him that he was from Lanulos in the galaxy of Geminides. So very interesting. Once again, kind of like the story of the Men in Black earlier, he specifically told this Earthling, this human, where he was from and shared that information. It is believed that whenever Derenberger and him would disappear for weeks on end from time to time, that they actually traveled to Lanulos to study him, to learn more about him. Now, when Derenberger eventually passed away, his daughter actually said that Indrid was at the funeral. And most people didn't know that because no one really knew who he was, but they had met him several occasions where he actually came to their house and they met the Grinning Man. Now, she said that it didn't seem like his smile was any different than anyone else's, but even Derenberger himself had made mention of the grin. So for some reason, she didn't pick up or see the grin like everyone else did, but he is known for his very large abnormal smile, and he was always smiling. So very interesting, and he was said that the first time he was seen that he was also in a metallic suit, whereas the first time that they talked about it, I believe that they said he was in a green suit of some sort. The second time, Derenberger said it was in a blue suit that whenever he had seen him and approached him, but a very shiny metallic, what you would imagine they sometimes portray aliens being in. But that he was from Lanulos and, like I said, the galaxy of Geminides. So very interesting. Over time, he's been spotted by several other people. They say he's a big man, very broad. Everyone, says the same thing about him being of dark complexion. More tan, not necessarily dark complexion, but a very tan face. There's been reports saying he has hair and he looks like a normal person, but just kind of odd. And then there's other reports, all kind of common, saying that he is bald with not a lot of facial features. Some even say he doesn't have a nose. So very, very interesting. I thought that you get kind of different takes from different people. But like I said, he is commonly associated with something of UFO nature, whether it be a wreck of a UFO recently in the area, talks of UFOs being released in a certain area, and then he shows up. And a lot of times he has been seen just before sightings of the Mothman, and also just before catastrophic events happen, like the collapsing of the bridge in Point Pleasant, which took, quite a bit of lives. So I'm not 100% sure what to make of this character, but I do certainly think he's very interesting. I think there's a lot more to be learned about him than most people realize. But, as I was saying earlier, he was at Derenberger's funeral, which would have put him well into his 90s, yet didn't seem to age anything like, her father did and passed away. He seemed still to be a young man. So very, very interesting. Something I'm fascinated about, something I was very excited to bring to the show tonight and talk a little bit about, because, he's been associated with a lot of things. In fact, there was a family called the Lilly family that, had paranormal activity happening in their house. And the daughter had mentioned she woke up in the middle of the night one night with a large man standing over her bed with a massive grin, and had seen him, and she couldn't move. She was like frozen, almost like sleep paralysis, but not exactly. And he told her he meant her no harm, and then he kind of, dissipated and vanished. So you get different takes on it. It's very interesting. I'm not sure exactly what to make of it. They do say that, they call him the Grinning Man, but they also say that it is believed that there is actually a race of grinning men, that he is just one of several of a specific race of alienistic beings from Lanulos, and that they're all very similar in nature, and that they all support a very large grin.
Fascinating, which could be why people have reported Indrid looking slightly different.
I agree. I thought about that before, that they all think he's the same. And for all we know, maybe that Indrid Cold is just a common name that they use when communicating with other beings, that Indrid Cold is not just one being or one man. Maybe that is a collective. So every time you meet one of these, they are Indrid Cold.
That's very fascinating. I actually really resonate with that. Let me tell you what little tiny bit I know, and this is all just coming from theory. Okay, I haven't channeled on this. I have a sense or a feeling about this particular being. I know that one story, and this could even have been the gentleman that you've been talking about, but I've actually heard one story about Indrid Cold having made contact with somebody, and then the Men in Black have actually gone to that guy too about his encounter. Did you hear about that?
I have heard associations where people had been contacted by both. So yes, I don't know if it's a specific one you speak of, but I have heard of people being contacted and talking to him and then being visited by the Men in Black and being asked questions. That's why a lot of times people say they believe he's associated, and I think he could be associated as far as some type of connectivity, that he might be an alien of some sort,
right,
and they're trying to follow him, but I don't believe they're for the same organization.
They're not affiliated.
I was going to say, I don't think they're affiliated, and I don't think they're on good terms with one another. I would believe, if anything, they are trying to find this being and capture him, or get to the bottom of why he's here visiting people, because he seems to only ever, from most of the accounts that I've seen, come in peace, try to learn from us, and communicate and mean no harm. So I don't believe that they mean harm, whereas the Men in Black obviously do. So I believe that they are affiliated in some sort, but not as a collective together.
They're not part of the organization, no. And that supports my suspicion, my theory that they're not directly affiliated, and that organizations work as factions, and they're often in conflict with each other. And these organizations are at war all the time. We don't even know about it. So that would make sense that certain MIB types could potentially come in and interrogate somebody who's had an encounter with Indrid, because, like you said, I do believe, I'm gonna close this out with my belief on this being and some of the physics behind it. I do believe that he is of extraterrestrial, or they in plural are of extraterrestrial species. I think they exist in a higher density than us, or a higher dimension. We as human beings in this time, in this version of reality, we exist in what's called as the fourth dimension and the third density. And there are contact protocols and there are contact rules in between humans, this version of humans, and extraterrestrial races. And I'm going to tell you what those two are right now. Number one, basically, it's called the Prime Directive. And the Prime Directive is a universal law that races that are of lesser development in consciousness and technology are not supposed to have any sort of influence or interaction with other forms of intelligent life that are more quote-unquote advanced than them. That's spiritually and technologically, both of those, okay? So you cannot have open contact or interference because of the infringement of free will to more advanced races that are spiritual or technologically advanced than humans. That law is called the Prime Directive, and that's a big reason why we as human beings don't have open disclosure and we don't have open contact with aliens, because we're still going through a lot of our own evolution, ascension, and development, okay? So that law is called the Prime Directive. There's a second code. Now, this is more of a moral code. It's not a law, but it is a moral code that benevolent, loving extraterrestrial races go by. And it's said like this. Cause no fear, leave no trace. And there's one more to those. I'm drawing a blank on it, but cause no fear, leave no trace, come in peace, I believe. And that is a moral code that benevolent ETs go by when they are sort of breaking that Prime Directive a little bit, whether that's coming into your home, having an interaction with you through the dream state, or seeing a UFO sighting is also a type of contact as well. But that's sort of a code that they go by, and it's basically non-invasive, non-threatening, non-harmful, to summarize what it means, in addition to the Prime Directive, which is no contact. So, if this Indrid Cold being or a species is making contact with humans, more specifically that one man that he had a relationship with until the point that he died, he's technically breaking the Prime Directive. But if you follow the thread, follow the rope, and connect the dots, he's not hurting anybody. He's not being directly malevolent. However, he is leaving a trace, and he is making his presence known. So he is breaking the Prime Directive. So what my ultimate theory is on Indrid Cold, he is of extraterrestrial consciousness, and he is breaking a universal law called the Prime Directive and having contact with us. However, I do not believe he is threatening. I do not believe he is malevolent. And I think that the way that he was able to have a relationship with this one particular human who ultimately passed could be that there are multiple Indrid Colds under the same identity, or there's a very common misunderstanding with physics and the way that time works to humans. We live in the third or the fourth dimension with the third density. And when I say fourth dimension, that's because you have space, height, width, and time itself is another variable of what makes up the dimensional space, time. But time for us moves linearly. Whereas from what I understand, most extraterrestrial beings who live outside of the matrix, outside of the grid, outside of like the Earth hologram, they don't experience linear time the same way that we do. So what that means is, let's say Indrid wants to develop a relationship with this particular human and learn from them and have a friendship even. He might be coming into our Earth dimension, our linear time, space, at different points in this man's life. And then when he leaves, time works differently for them, and physics probably works a little bit different as well for them as well. And then he can come back to Earth. But since time is moving in its own linear path here than it is for Indrid, maybe only 20 minutes has passed. Maybe only a couple weeks or a couple days have passed for Indrid in his dimension, in his version of reality. That's why maybe he doesn't age.
That very well could be, because, I mean, people are still saying, I mean, all these years later, that there's still sightings of him in Point Pleasant, West Virginia from time to time. And, you know, this gentleman, by all accounts, should be, at this point, over 100 years old. So I think time definitely does move differently, and I think you nailed it on the head that he broke the Prime directive, and that could be why the Men in Black are looking for him, because not only, you know, it's one thing if an alien is seen, and no one likes that, they don't like that, they want to, you know, try to limit any type of disclosure, but if an alien is seen, then interacts with you, talks with you, shares with you his name, where he's from, gives you other insight that no one should normally know, maybe takes you to his home and lets you journey with him and shows you things, he is breaking all kinds of rules that they are not to break, and obviously someone would want to silence not only anyone here that's, you know, learning these things, but obviously want to silence the being that is doing this, because he did introduce Derenberger at one point in time. Derenberger had made this statement and said that he did introduce me to two other grinning men, Demo Hassan and Carl Ardo. So the only three grinning men that have ever been talked about in history are Indrid Cold being the most famous and the one that's always referred to. But at one point, somewhere, two others were introduced to Derenberger by the name of Demo Hassan and Carl Ardo. And it's the only time you ever hear of these other two, from my knowledge at least. So he's now introducing other members of his race. He's now letting them, you know, meet this guy. So I think that this being is making direct contact with humans on multiple occasions. And he's letting a lot of disclosure out to us that they don't want to be heard or seen. And it's been happening over decades and decades.
That's fascinating. The plot thickens. I did not know that aspect, that there were more of them. So I think that this is congruent with the fact that we're talking about a whole race, a whole species of these grinning men.
I believe so, yes. And like I said, it could be that there's multiple ones that say that they are Indrid Cold, or as you said, it could be, you know, just the difference in time barriers there, or as, you know, you could say, well, why would they look different? Maybe he chooses to appear different to different people. Happens a lot in paranormal investigations, which is more my side, that things manifest to different people as different things. You can have three people in a house experiencing all paranormal activity, but three people have completely different feelings. I smelled bread baking heavily in the room, and no one else smelled it. One said, I heard a kid saying something to me, and everyone else says, I didn't hear anything. And one saying, I full-blown seen a man walk down the hallway, and the other two didn't see it. There's things that manifest differently and show people different things depending upon how it wants to interact with you. So depending upon that, maybe he shows different people different sides of him. Sometimes the dark-skinned, you know, hair, big smiling, normal, average, everyday looking man. Sometimes the bald, very alienistic looking being, and who knows what the reason behind that is. But I believe that he is certainly showing people a side of him, different sides of him, letting them know more about him than he's supposed to. And maybe it's because he wants us to be more aware of the fact that there are not only his race out there, but thousands of others.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, before we end this show, I think Garrett, you and I living an hour from the border of West Virginia, we should really do a day trip down there, or a night trip rather, and do some cryptid hunting, okay? Because we got like the Grafted Monster, we have the Mothman, we've got Indrid Cold, we have there's like 3 or 4 other cryptids that are regularly spotted in West Virginia, and we are an hour from the border, dude. Let's go.
I think we should. I'm definitely interested in doing that, you know, whether we go down just on a regular trip, but especially once a year they do the Mothman Festival.
Yeah.
And it is just a massive paranormal supernatural festival of everything. Mothman, you know, the Kondune, as you've recently talked about on one of your videos. If you haven't seen the Contact video from Daniel James of his experiences recently with the Sasquatch in the mountains of California, please go check that out. It is on our Celestial Oddities PairOfNormal Guys podcast page on Facebook. You should be following that anyway, because not only is it a great place to talk to one another, hear about a lot of paranormal stuff, but it keeps you up to date on all episodes that are dropping, past, present, and future, and you get some great free extras like the video that Daniel recently shared with clear-cut audio evidence of an entire collective of Sasquatch communicating. It is fascinating. And if that's something that interests you, you'll absolutely love it. So make sure you check that out. But getting back to what I was saying, there's a lot of different categories and things that gather during this festival, and that would be ideal for us just to experience in general, but obviously for promotion of our show and getting our messages out there. But I am completely for going down there to Point Pleasant, and certainly experiencing what it is that they have to offer there, maybe doing a little bit of cryptid hunting ourselves, talking to some of the local people about that. I'm sure they're probably like, another asshole asking about the fucking Mothman, but, right. We're going to ask them, damn it, and we're going to see what they have to say, do some research, because Daniel has said in the past, we are compiling a lot of evidence, a lot of research, and over the years, as we compile this, we will eventually release some type of encyclopedia-style book of just a massive collection of the research, evidence, and stories that we've come across. So that would be a great thing to add to that book.
Very fascinating, and I'm looking forward to, getting as many stories as we can to sort of bring that to life, and we will ultimately make a total key or a legend of all of these sightings and experiences and tie them together to see if we can connect the dots. I know Garrett and I discussed one time privately that a really fascinating interest of ours is to see if we can sort of link some sort of commonality to paranormal sightings and experiences to each other from people who exist in other geographical locations, other time periods, and see if there's some sort of commonality that, links them to the point where it's almost like you could almost predict an interaction or a sighting based on who experienced them when and at what points in their lives. And so please share your stories with us, guys. Send us an email. Call into the other portion of our show where Garrett takes calls. Let's connect and let's figure this out.
Absolutely. You heard Dan say it. If you want to, be a part of this and help us out, we would love your help. If you have a story or encounter yourself, have anything you can share with us, please do. Any suggestions, any questions, or any information that would be helpful to us, please send that to celestialoddities@gmail.com. And stick around for all of our other future episodes coming soon. Listen to all of our past episodes. Like I said before, there's something for absolutely everyone. We are far from done. We have so much more we want to bring you guys. If you have a suggestion, let us know. Other than that, we want to thank you for listening tonight. And as always, open your mind and be open to the things around you, because there's a lot more happening than you might realize. So open your eyes and be a part of it. Daniel, thank you for joining me tonight. Any last words?
I just want to thank everybody for listening and going on this journey with us. We're all in this together, and we're all here to share stories and connect. So we will catch you guys again very soon. We have a special holiday episode coming.
stay tuned for announcements on that in the next day or two, and we'll go from there. We love you guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Celestial Oddities.